Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to another episode of Money and Mindset at 40 Plus, where we, through our stories, invite you to play big so you can conquer your money fears and your money stories and live an abundant life, the one that you always dreamed of.
This
I'm
big.
Sylvia.
I'm Jenny. This big.
This big, so big we can't see it on the screen. Jenny, is that a sweater I see?
Yes, it's a sweater, Sylvia. That means it's getting colder. That means that I move from wine to tea. That's one of the things that happens over
Oh,
the
is that
winter.
what happens in the fall? Yeah, wine to tea.
I have a friend that moves from white to red, depending on the season.
Well, there you
So,
go.
yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Well,
Yeah.
today we had a great chat. If you missed our show last week,
Yep.
we were talking all about the money archetypes and we went through them. There are 8 of them. We are
Mm-hmm.
going to just do a quick reminder of what those are. But today we're going to take it one step further because there's so many things that we
Mm-hmm.
can say about the archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be talking about the relationships between them, whether that be the relationships that you have between your top two, and even perhaps your top and your bottom one,
Mm-hmm.
uh, as well as the external relationships that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Your spouse, I can think of your spouse, your children, your family members, your boss, your clients, right? How to get them to pay on time and what's going on with them. And
And
so
how to
we're,
how to speak the right language, Sylvia, the
oh,
right
yeah.
adjectives to get them understanding your perspective. Sorry, had to jump in.
That's okay. That's okay because that's what we're going to leave you with today. We're going to take some of those examples. We have our stories. Did you delve into this while in the last week? What came up for you? What is your archetype? What was your main archetype
Yeah.
that you think you might be?
Mm.
That's always very interesting. As a recap, I am a connector. Jenny is an alchemist,
List.
all about ideas, and I'm
Mhm,
all about people. Not that Jenny doesn't like people,
mhm,
because she does.
mhm,
But so we'd
mhm.
love to know what your archetypes are. If you missed last show, we're going to do
Yep.
a quick recap. You can always go back to last week's show
Yeah.
on the YouTube channel, and we will talk about this now. So let me get. I want to show you this slide. We've got
And
slides.
I
Oh
love
goodness.
Sylvia that Stacy says good morning. So we didn't scare her off
Yes,
last week, right?
she's back.
She came
Back
back.
for more.
I'm so pleased. So a quick recap. And remember the way I framed this last week, Sylvia? It was that it's not like, I mean, there could be 100 different archetypes, but there are 8 main ways that we operate in our relationships with money. And why I love this model is it helps you have a kind of a more objective relationship with money as a tool rather than a money as a way of operating in the world. There's a lot of stuff going under core beliefs around money that's happening without us knowing. And I find this is a really less confrontational way of looking at how we perceive money and how we use money so that we can have some really fruitful conversations with the ultimate goal of changing our behavior. So
Mm.
if you will remember, the ruler was the person that wanted to build an empire, wanted to empower people under them. So not so much about dominance, more about like making everything better. Great sense of growth and possibility, crippled also with the idea of never good enough. Interesting, right? Never ever achieving enough, not doing enough. The accumulator is the inner banker on the right. We need to get a woman, by the way, for this. We need to start changing our archetypes.
There we
This
go.
needs to be a
Yeah.
woman banker with kick-ass
Well,
heels.
saving money, saving money. That's what I, just think of the banker. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Love and feels very risky to spend. I think that's the other thing to highlight. The alchemist bottom left, that is me. That's the person that believes in ideas, lives in their head. Ideas are more valuable than money, has that love-hate relationship with money. That's not a bad thing. We'll just talk more about that in a bit. The celebrity that loves to show and share. So we talk a lot about the sort of ego part of celebrity, wanting to wear the new clothes, the new outfit, but also the generosity of a celebrity, showing that they care by sharing dinner with everyone or picking up the
Mm.
bill or being the center of attention. They love first class, Sylvia. And if you go to the next slide, just review the connector. This is you, so
That's
much
me.
you. The connector is the person that believes in the value of relationships and really builds businesses on the value of relationships. So many of my fundraisers out there will understand this 100%, right? We build relationships to our cause, which result in money coming in. The
Mhm.
maverick, love the balloons. The maverick loves to take a risk, loves to jump off a cliff, loves to try something new, is not afraid of risk. Sometimes the hardest thing for them to do is one foot in front of the other, even. And that describes, very much identifies their personality. The nurturer, bottom left. So that's the person that just wishes they had more money to give to everyone in need, uses money often as a tool to say, I'm sorry, here you go. Usually pretty good with their finances, ironically, nurturers, but get into situations that get really complex and sticky or interdependent. I love that word,
Mm.
with money.
I've worked with them, and
Yeah,
in the caregiving world,
yeah,
they might be good with their own finances, but they often don't like to charge for what they do. Particularly, depends what they're doing, of course.
yeah,
But the caregivers, I know if you're a dual out there watching it,
yeah,
we have to charge. We have to charge a
yeah,
living wage, right? Otherwise, we can't put food on the table. Yes,
yeah.
and the romantic,
No.
the
Well, I
romantic.
love this picture because I actually would really like to do this. This looks really cool, doesn't it, with the lanterns around
It
it?
does.
Do I have a big birthday? Oh, I do. Okay, well, let me work on that. We can work on that for my big birthday. But this is the experiential person. This is the
Mm.
person that buys the tickets to the famous concert. This is the one that drives to go see Bruce Springsteen or whoever your favorite person is to have an experience, or that fancy dinner, right? And so those are the 8 archetypes. What we're going to talk about today is the relationships between the two, which I
Hmm.
find absolutely fascinating. So let me begin with a story. You know, there's always good stories on this show. So settle back. It was about 2.5 years ago, and I had finally hit my head on the upper cupboard above my sink one time too many. And I turned to my husband and said, Steve, we need a kitchen reno. And you know what he said, Sylvia?
No, I don't know what he said. Probably, no, we don't need a kitchen reno.
That would cost a lot of money. Anybody out there recognize that,
Oh,
right?
yes. Yes,
And
yes.
and so actually, ironically, the first thing he did was try to fix the cupboard for me because he's a
Yeah, I was
smart
just gonna
man.
say that's a cheaper option
Yep.
it's just because you bumped your head. Just get a new pair of glasses. I'll buy you a $300 pair of glasses, Jenny.
And he put in this little things that stick the thing in. I'm not describing them very well, but anyway, it worked for a while. And then I hit my head again, Sylvia. And this was war. So I that actually was like a turning point for me in my relationship with money, because until then I can't say that I had really wanted much. I have been really lucky, and I'm very grateful for the upbringing I've had, the things that I've wanted. I'm not a big Audi or BMW. I'm not a fancy person, but I've always been able to live within my means. But I wanted a new kitchen, and I'd had enough. And I started doing the math, and my kids are going to be out of the house before I could make this happen. So I turned around, and we're actually going to have her as a guest coming up, a woman named Kate
Mm-hmm.
Arnold, who helped me take a look at our family cash flow and find ways and be much more ownership, have more ownership of the money we were spending in the household. And for me, actually, I have quite a bit of autonomy on that. We have a pretty healthy money relationship, my husband and I, but that autonomy of being able to control some of the bills and take a look at my cash flow month by month. And lo and behold, Sylvia, I started
Mm-hmm.
saving. I know, Jenny, and saving in the same sentence. I know, it's a
Well,
shocker.
you finally decided there was something that you want,
Mhm.
and you wanted it. It was
Yeah,
important to you enough that you could
yeah,
forego perhaps some Starbucks coffees or a
yeah,
conference or some coaching or whatever it is that became your priority,
you bet.
right? But
Yeah,
now, when we're talking money relationships, it has to be a priority for your spouse. And clearly it
yeah.
probably wasn't. And let me go back.
Mhm.
Jenny had been talking about this reno since she bought the house. I mean, that was how long have you lived there?
12 years.
Right? So it wasn't just the day that she hit her head. This had been in her mind for since you bought the house. You said eventually we'll renovate this, right? It does need renovation.
It's
So
fine. How many of us have said it's
that's
fine?
fine.
It's
Yes. But
fine.
every time you go into it, you're like, wouldn't it be great if it looked
Mhm.
like a different
Yeah,
thing? So for you, it
absolutely.
became a priority. So how did
Yeah,
you then move
yeah,
to actually, well, you said Kate Arnold,
yeah. And
saving.
And so remember that alchemist personality, right? Ideas. I was onto the design, Sylvia, but I had to actually figure out the finances and the budget and the planning. And so then what I want to talk about is the relationship between, in my case, an alchemist and an accumulator. So how I bring it to them. And in the past, I'm going to own a little bit of, how come he doesn't see things the way I see things? Poor Jenny, let's have a pity party, right?
Yeah.
And I changed that big time. And so what I came to him and said was, honey, I've taken a look at the houses on the street. From an investment perspective, we need to do some work on this. It doesn't have to be right now, but I have a bit of a plan that I'd like to share with you. And I walked him through kind of what I think what thought the potential could be and how it could actually enhance an asset that we already own. And finally, where I thought we could find the money and where I thought we could save the money. And it was very different for me because rather than it being a very adversarial conversation, it was really a very collaborative conversation. It was very empowering. And I actually think it was one of the first times I could see from his perspective, his concerns. I truly listened because I wasn't so emotionally caught up in the money. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the money being not directly tied to me. It's a sort of an external problem to be solved rather than an emotional connection to it. I think that's what I'm trying to get at. So fast forward together, one of the ironies of this whole thing is that I still laugh. My kids still laugh because when I get on a project, Sylvia.
You do, I know.
So my kids were coming home and saying, there's no food in the fridge. There's no groceries, because of course I was now going to Food Basics. I was now buying everything in bulk, and the most expensive things are things like chocolate and all those fun little things in packages.
You were saving, yes.
Yeah. So anyway, fast forward that I have a beautiful, beautiful new kitchen that I am ecstatic with every day I walk into. I'll post some pictures. How's that in the YouTube? Yeah. I'm super proud of it. And, I think at the end, there was one thing that Steve was very keen on was the quality of the workmanship. Was not interested in sacrificing on that. And so he had a big part play into, and for him, it wasn't a cost thing, by the way, interestingly, as an accumulator, it was an investment in something that he appreciated and that he knew would be done properly. So just a note to self out there, making sure as us fundraisers, we handle objections all the time, right? Making sure you understand exactly what the objection is so that you can address it properly and not making assumptions. I think when we're in relationships, we can be emotionally charged. And this really speaks to the external relationships that we've talked about, Sylvia. So in my case, myself and my spouse. But you might have a boss that you want to invest in something, a professional development, or to take on a new line of project. Or in my world, you want to go to a new direct mail service provider that's more expensive than the one you have now. What happens in your world? What kind of things do your
Well, I was just thinking about my story because my spouse is an accumulator, and this summer our air condition has been broken for a little while on the main floor, and it's a few weeks, but summer finishes and then I forget all about it, and then this summer I said too, it's a pandemic summer. I'm like, oh, we just need to buy an air conditioner. Let's just go, do this, and then JP the accumulator is like, no, we haven't saved for this, or like, where are we gonna, like, where's the money gonna? And I didn't use the language. I didn't approach him with that. I was just like, okay, where do we go? Let's sign up, and in my mind, it's because I was like, well, we're not going to be able to have people over for, and he's like, well, it's a pandemic anyway. I'm like, oh, that's true. So I didn't think, it was just rushing in about my ideas of dinners and the air condition and people and, that connecting piece with, and I did not approach. So the approach and the language we use is so, so, so important. Yeah.
Wow.
Definitely.
That's a great example, right? Of a connector and an accumulator, and the difference between, I've been watching the prices on air conditioners, right? Can you imagine how you would set it up differently?
Yeah, had I done my research, I think what you did with Steve was, bring the figures and say, well, this is what it's, do the budget ahead, do a little bit of work. And I think when we work with other people as well, if you want to have this coaching, you're working in a business and your boss, you want to approach them and say, I want to take this coaching. Well, what does that look like? What it's going to get me? And then really come prepared, because sometimes I think when we just launch something out there, and I'm a person that does that, I speak my thoughts rather than prepare them to be spoken. And for me, I'm just brainstorming. And I get caught up with my spouse a lot. I'll just be brainstorming. He's like, "What do you mean? What you're going to invest in this? What's going on?" I'm like, "No, I'm just talking out loud. I like to have the back and forth and the banter." And
That's when you
but I
call
think
me.
there are people that we do that with, and it's not always our
Your
spouses,
spouse.
right?
You
Yeah,
can, you can call me anytime, Sylvia.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I love
yeah.
Colleen's comments here. Yeah. And she's, yeah, she did a big expense. She put composite. I'm guessing because she didn't want to touch that sucker anymore. She wanted it done, right?
Good
So
for
way
you,
to go,
Colleen. Yeah,
Colleen.
she's
I love
talking
it.
about her updating her deck from wood to composite, big
Yeah.
expense, but you're planning
Yeah.
things out. And I think,
Yeah.
I was asking Jenny, what's the most
Mm,
prickly archetype? Because I keep thinking they're the accumulators, and she says there's no bad or good, and they're all can be prickly, right?
mhm.
So let's
Yeah.
talk about the internal.
Okay.
Let's just give me some examples of an
Yeah.
internal
So
uh,
we talked about external.
relationship.
Yeah. If
Yeah.
we talked about external, you can talk about, the people that are around you in your world, but sometimes you can have a conflict internally around money as well. Sometimes that shows up. I always say like your number one and your number two when you do your money mindset assessment. And by the way, I should mention we have a couple spots. I think there's only 4 spots left now, right, Sylvia? Yeah,
Yep. Yeah.
before the end of August to do an assessment of your own. So the top 2 often are yours and sometimes your family or your parents or the way you were raised, but sometimes they can be in direct conflict. Let's give an example. How about a ruler and an accumulator? So your first one is, I can remember someone I worked with who was a ruler, so really wanted to build this empire, grow a business, but liked to have money in the bank. So it was this inner conflict between the two that was quite exhausting, to be honest. Let me use a more concrete example from fundraising world. Is somebody who wants to grow a shop, a foundation shop, but loves to have a fantastic reserve, right? So wants to have that
Mm.
money in the bank for a rainy day, which is really the accumulator, very risk averse. That's a really tough one. Thank goodness we have boards of directors that help us make wise decisions. But to know that the way to get a ruler to invest or an accumulator to invest is to know that it's going towards making something better or making more money. So food for thought as you're trying to navigate that internally, noticing that sort of challenge can be a real trigger for going, why is that happening? Why am I holding back from putting the actual number of costs for that or whatever, Sylvia?
Super interesting.
Yeah,
I am a connector and ruler, so I
yeah,
do always, playing big and wanting more,
yeah.
but I don't find that they're too much in conflict,
Conflict.
too much in
Yeah,
though I tend because I want to go big. I guess this is where it would be because I want to go big and I like to invest in let's
yeah,
buy this and I knew this and I want
yeah,
this and a nice website and
yeah,
I understand the value of all that.
yeah.
But perhaps the connector who doesn't really care about the money so much, she's doing this for her people and building that I will, not do the planning that's necessary and then perhaps plan for all these different projects coming up. I just launch into things.
Kind of like the air conditioner.
Kind of like the air conditioner, right? Which we didn't get in the end, but that's okay. That's all right.
Well,
I
you
will plan
can
for it.
more time to save, right?
That's right.
Now, I also want to pick up on the other internal that I find is also very powerful, which is the least strong archetype. So each of us have 8, and there's always one that sort of straggles along behind in the race. And for me, for example, is the celebrity. And
Mm.
the reason I mention it is I've been thinking a lot in our modern world about blind spots. And I just think that our last archetype is often our blind spot. I can get really judgy about people that are celebrities. And I was telling you
Hmm.
just before we started, a Rolex watch is like, to me, is like a huge waste of money. And you said, what did you say?
I said, "Oh, it's so nice. So nice." That's what I said. A nice watch. Isn't that
So,
what I said?
yeah, it's
Yes.
so pretty, right?
It's
Like,
so
why wouldn't
pretty.
you
Why
want
wouldn't
one?
you want one? Yeah.
Yeah. So can you see that huge judgment I might have to dismiss a donor, dismiss a person
Mm.
because of the way they're dressed or the way they show themselves by the way they show their money, and yet that might just be a complete expression of who they are and it's very joyful for them. So that's another watch out for that internal. There's the top 2 and then the bottom one being your kind of Achilles heel or a blind spot.
And and also a money story.
Yeah.
We're not going to delve into Jenny's money story about the richness of
Mm-hmm.
what that seems like, having a Rolex watch or the Audi
Mm-hmm.
car or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, the Lexus, and
Yeah.
what does that mean? So there's an interesting, and that's for another topic. We won't
Yeah.
talk about that today,
Absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
the bottom one for me is nurturer,
Hmm.
which coming in, and I find that very ironic. I run a doula agency, and we'd think that we'd be very so for my blind spot, I think
Hmm.
the nurturing, though I nurture my relationships, so there'd be
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So I think, but it makes perfect sense to me that you went into the doula business, because the doula business is all about women and women's relationships with each other. It's a very
Exactly.
special thing. So that connector drew you in, but the actual doula-ing was not the part that you loved. It was
Mm.
supporting the women. It was being part of that community of women as a connector that really did it for you and got your juices flowing. And that's still true, Sylvia. And that's maybe why you moved into business coaching as well, because you could
Hmm.
see bigger impact and more reach.
And I still want to keep the agency because
Yeah.
that's my empire, right? That's
Yes. Yes.
that's my empire. I have a lot of branches to that. I also have the
Yeah.
coaching business, so that's the other empire. So I just
Yeah.
keep playing bigger, right? But Kristen, yeah,
Yeah.
CJ, hey CJ, thanks for joining. Yeah, her
Yeah.
top two are ruler and accumulator, and that's
Yeah.
her that internal struggle we were talking about. How do
Mhm.
I build this with
Mhm.
without spending? I have to keep
Yep.
my money for me. Yes, definitely the internal
Absolutely.
struggle. Yeah.
Just one more thought about accumulators. I have a
Mm.
wonderful friend who's 70 something. Maybe she's 71. I don't know. She said, Jenny, I still save 10% of my income, even in retirement, because it's just the way
Nice.
she's
Just the
built, right? She's
Well,
always
that
going to
is
keep
her
doing it.
identity. And I am really delving into
Hmm.
identities these days.
Hmm.
And I think,
Hmm.
you can say, I am a saver or I am a
Right.
spender.
Yeah.
And I believe I say that I spend money. I like to spend money, and that's part of my identity.
Yeah.
But as
Yeah.
we're building something, I think I
Hmm.
need to start changing that, some of that identity, but we won't go
Yeah.
into that here. But
Yeah.
yeah, Stacey, the more I talk about each category, I feel I am a bit of each. And I think
Yeah.
we can see that.
Yeah.
There's part of me
Absolutely.
that likes nice things,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the celebrity part of it. Now,
Yeah.
we talked internal. I know we talked. I want to get into a little bit of some
Yeah.
of what you see, perhaps some stories
The way it
about
looks.
how that
Yeah.
looks and manifests itself. And we
Well, so it plays out similarly along the lines of people that prefer, like, I'm using the analogy of some people like reports, some people like to talk, right? So you can see it in the workplace. There are people who would rather give you a verbal report because they're connectors and they want to see your face
yeah.
and they want to explain it to you, right? And they want you to know the special nuances, versus the folks that are accumulators or a bit more objective, who see it as facts and therefore it can be circulated as a memo,
Yeah.
and there's no need for
It's
any
like,
emotional
why are you
context.
in my office right now? Just
Yeah.
send me an email.
Yeah. And similarly, and this all relates to money too, because your example of the impulsiveness of the air conditioner, that's the way you work through things. You think about them,
Yeah, out
and you
loud.
talk them out loud, and it can be very overwhelming. By the way, those of you that are leaders on this call or lead groups of people, I am guilty of that too, Sylvia. I tend to
Mm.
want to think of every single potential, and my poor staff sometimes are like, oh my God, what do I do with this
Like, where are you
information?
going? Yes.
Yeah.
Where is your
Yeah.
priority? We don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
And actually, I might even go even further and talk about going back to school, right? So all of us that are busy ruminating about going back to school, keep in mind there are big ears listening. And keep in mind that at the end of the day, we're going to have to be clear and we're going to have to make decisions for our families. And so how this relates to money is the way we make decisions about that stuff is going to be the exact same way we make decisions about money. So there's going to be the person that wants the financial statement sent to them and wants to review it and ask pointed questions over email. And then there's people like you and I who want to sit in the office, want to have a relationship with their advisor, want to know how old their kids are. I want to know their favorite wine, want to understand why they believe stock X, Y, and Z is a good value, and learn and experience something. So all of these archetypes are interplaying. And I guess my big takeaway, I can't believe we're at 12:25. My big takeaway for everyone listening is, how do I start unpacking my relationship with money? Do I see myself in one of those archetypes? And if you are having trouble with that, please do reach out, because we have some assessments available. And how am I seeing myself play out with others? And is it positive or negative? And taking ownership of that change of, oh, I'd like that relationship to be better. I'd like my relationship with my husband to be better about this. So what can I do? That ownership and empowerment piece is really what playing big is what all this whole episode is all about, Sylvia.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So the language, yeah, I love that. And recognizing how we need to
Mm-hmm.
talk about things, how we get them.
Yeah.
I think choosing the right person to do that with and
Yeah.
doing the brainstorming before you actually propose your project or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and knowing who you're speaking with. I
Yeah.
really think that's an
Absolutely.
important one.
I think there's a maturity level there that I'm very excited about. And I don't know if
Mm.
it's my age, but finding ways to communicate to others in a way that meets their needs is really important to me.
So important as a business owner. Think of all the clients you're going to have. Think of all the different clients that you might have. Some
Mm-hmm.
pick up the phone,
Mm-hmm.
and more I'm like, who's calling me? But there are some people. I'm one of those people who calls. I think it's easier to just finish it up in 2 minutes. But there are other
Mm-hmm.
people who won't take my calls, and they're
Yeah.
all only by text, and they want
Yep.
or send me the proposal by or send me your contract
Yep.
by email. I'll take a look at it. And
Yep.
some are just oh yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, sign me up and send me all the docs after. But there was a conversation
You
first.
bet.
So I think
Yeah.
relating how
Yeah.
those relationships are really important. And when
Yeah.
you can sense who people are, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if they're, you're in a face-to-face meeting and they come driving up in a nice car, well, I think,
Mm-hmm.
our judgments tend to come up then. So that's also an interesting, what we were talking about is how we
Mm-hmm.
perceive other people, but
Mm-hmm.
not to judge. Let them
Yeah.
come to you and unpack what they've got to unpack.
Absolutely. And so the challenge is to just keep watching everybody, keep
Mm.
noticing what triggers you, keep getting closer to that archetype. There is quite a bit of information, you can find out more, but those empowering money mindsets that I've gotten out of these assessments are just so powerful. Like mine for an accumulator, I'll finish on this, I promise, is the more good I do in the world, the more good I do, the more good I can do in the world. That really sort of helps me put a value to the ideas and contributions that I make so that I can help others, Sylvia, because money
Well,
is a tool.
before you figured this out, I remember you were charging low prices.
Mm-hmm.
You were spinning your wheels,
Yeah.
not knowing what to offer people. And then when you really honed in on, oh my gosh, that
Yeah.
is it, how can I help people help others
Yeah.
and may have a bigger impact? Then you
Yeah.
really, but it took that. It
Mm-hmm.
took this work that you were doing now with money
Yeah.
to get you to this point.
And I won't stop. I'm just going to keep up leveling. So please don't think that just because you hit a certain number, this stops. It continues.
It does.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, speaking of up leveling, and what are we talking about next week, Sylvia?
Oh, we're talking about something I love to talk about. Uh, Imposter syndrome. If you've never heard of this, definitely come and join us. But we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about something that affects a lot of women feeling like imposters in their field
Mm-hmm.
of work
Mm-hmm.
and how that is stopping you from playing big, how that is stopping you from moving
Mm-hmm.
forward. And I've worked with a lot of these women, and
Mm-hmm.
I've been guilty of this and still am at
Mm-hmm.
points as we're playing bigger and as we're up leveling.
Mm-hmm.
Who am I?
Mm-hmm.
And feeling like I do not belong in the arena. But we're going to be telling you some, you'll take some takeaways for you
Yep.
to bust
Absolutely.
this story and start working
Yeah.
towards playing, the role you want to play and taking your space on the stage.
Love it.
That's what we're talking about.
Okay, so final thoughts. Please play big today. Today's a great day to play big. Maybe we should add that in. I like that. Today's a great day to play big. If you are curious about accumulators, alchemists, celebrities, nurturers, all those wonderful archetypes, please do reach out. We've already done one and it was a fantastic experience. So please do reach out. There's a special on until the 31st of August. The numbers were $299, which is a huge bargain. It includes also a coaching session and your assessment, of course. And we would love to get to know some of our listeners more, Sylvia.
Yes, definitely. Join us live every Thursday at 12. We're here and we love to chat and we love all the comments.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks so
so
much.
much for participating. This is why we do
Why we
this.
do it. Okay.
And we'll catch you next week.
And happy
Don't
back to
forget
school.
and subscribe if you're not
Yeah,
subscribed. Subscribe, like, share, and all those things.
all those
Have a
wonderful things.
wonderful week. Yes, happy back to school for those going back. Bye.
Bye.